So I'm going to be talking a foundation for fast digital innovation, but first a little bit more about me. As I said, I'm VP of Solution Architecture for WSO2. Before I joined WSO2, I worked in the civil service, UK civil service for about 19 years. Running integration platforms and API services for HMRC. A few little bits about my personal life. During lockdown, I got a new hobby of 3D modelling, and I decided to buy a 3D printer as well, which is also really good fun. And we played a lot more board games, because I don't do sport, as you might be able to tell. So, you know, board games are my sport. But yeah, I did this because a colleague of mine did a presentation in Australia, and he had like a plane up there, and he was learning to fly, and it all looked very exciting. Mine's not quite that exciting. But anyway, let's kick off. So, you know, we all know times are changing. Digital innovation, digital services are all advancing very rapidly. You know, back in my day when I first got my first Spectrum, I never thought that, you know, someone could make money playing a game or having someone watch them play a game. You know, and platforms like Twitter and Facebook and YouTube, you know, have just introduced so many different careers that you can sort of earn money on. You know, funding for projects, Kickstarter. Now, one of my favourite authors, Brandon Sanderson, if you like fantasy, I would highly recommend him. He recently launched the #1 Kickstarter of all time so far, where he had a target of 1 million and he reached it in 35 minutes. Within 24 hours, he was up to 15 million to self-publish a new set of 4 books. And it was absolutely astounding. Now, that sort of thing just was not possible before, you know, all the crowdfunding, crowdsourcing. So, you know, you've got to be able to take advantage and think about how to use these new platforms and new ways of working to drive your business forward. So, you know, and we all know the horror stories of the past, you know, this is from back in 2017, but it's still relevant now, where over 52% of big companies cease to exist due to digital disruption. You know, we all know the Blockbuster, AOL, Nokia, Kodak, and that was mainly because they didn't adapt to the change. They couldn't innovate fast enough. They weren't willing to change the way they worked or the way they thought about their IT and how they provided their business services as well. So, from working with WSO2 and my previous experience, you know, WSO2 have been working in integration and API management for over 17 years now. And one thing sort of has stood out, and it's not the capability to build digital services. You know, we've been building digital services for years, decades now. I remember, you know, when HMRC went through its latest digital transformation, you know, they said, we're going to do things digitally now. It's like, well, that's what I've been doing for the last 15 years. You know, we've got online VAT, we've got all of that stuff. But it just goes to show that this isn't, you know, there is no you've done it and you're done. It's a constant evolution, and you've got to be able to keep up, and you've got to do things differently. And that was actually one of the most challenging CIOs we ever had, and he made a massive difference in how HMRC services were delivered online, and created some great platforms, which I'll talk about a bit later. So, you know, it's not about just creating the service. It's not creating digital services. It's about having the right enablers to allow you to create those services, allow you to evolve those and continue to prosper in whatever market you're working in, whether it's, you know, retail or finance or social care, healthcare. And while digital transformation can take a while, being able to innovate digitally quickly is absolutely key. Now, to do that, you've got a few things you're going to need. So, first of all, you're going to need some ideas. So, you've got to think about how your organisation is trying to do business. So, the digital services, experiences that people are after these days are of critical importance. You know, how you deliver your services to the masses, it's changed a lot recently due to various global events. And you've got to be able to innovate on top of that and you've got to accelerate online presence, accelerate remote communication, remote working, and different ways of, doing business and socialising as well. As I said, myself, during lockdown, instead of going out for a walk, I sat in front of my computer some more after sitting on 12 hours of Zoom calls, which, may or may not have been good, but, you've got to do things, you've got to learn to do things differently. And all industries and service providers have got to look for those new ways, and that's where sort of innovation is key. So this is a tricky topic. I'm not going to dive too deep, but the first thing that you've got to do is you've got to sort of change the way people think. I was having some really interesting conversations over lunch today, before lunch today, sorry. And, there's the trickiest thing is getting people to think differently about how IT delivers. One of the key things that sort of came up there is, we've always used terms like IT and the business. The chap I was talking to is sitting in the audience today. He said, you've got to learn to think of that as one entity. It's your business. IT and the business are not separate. Your services you provide are reliant on IT to deliver those, and you've got to have the platforms to do it. But you can't treat each other as sort of adversaries in that. You've got to have a strategy that embraces both. So, and the key thing in my experience is that top-down support is absolutely crucial. If your senior leadership team is not invested and not engaged in that, it doesn't matter how enthusiastic your teams and your people are, they're not going to have the frameworks and support to deliver innovation and to deliver new services. And you've got to, potentially, in most cases, change your organisation structure. Agile ways of working, agile delivery, the old two-pizza team rule. You've got to have those teams with the right mix of skills and representation to sort out whatever problem or deliver whatever service they need to do. And one of the things I've seen fail time and time again is getting the right involvement, I'm going to use the wrong term, from the business in that team. You've got to have representations of the front-end people plus the technologists to learn how to deliver those capabilities. And where you've got technologists being the product manager and the people at the front end aren't engaged, aren't part of the team, aren't doing the retrospectives, it doesn't work. You end up doing exactly what was done years ago with waterfall projects, working for months and months, and delivering something that doesn't meet the business need at the end of the day. So getting that structure correct is one of the probably the hardest challenge. You can play with the tech all day and get support, but getting that structure, getting those teams right is something that you've got to put a lot of effort into. And it's also about collaborating with the wider organisation as well, getting input, allowing people to come up with ideas, hackathons, etc. Any tools that you can use to see how you can improve not just new services, but your internal systems and processes is critical. So today, everyone is after, creating a unique digital experience, and that becomes a real competitive differentiation for a lot of service and industries. You've got to sort of get on board with what people want now. Services are now on demand, convenient, fast, and I know we're on the CISO as well on the other room, secure as absolutely critical, but people want services anywhere, anytime, and they've got to, you've almost got to anticipate their needs, but you've got to be able to react fast. And that is around getting that experience, designing that experience, and getting a feedback loop that works. Now, one thing we sort of tend to talk about when we're talking about digital experience is you're talking about, at the end of a mobile phone, your end customers, you're, looking to provide them better services. But according to a McKinsey report, you know, over 80% of the B2B decision makers prefer remote interactions over digital self-service. And this is where we tend to forget as well that your partners, your supply chain, the other people that you want to work with will all benefit from the same sort of approach you take to providing online services for end customers. You know, self-service, automation, anytime, anywhere access, real-time data. So you've got to have a platform that enables you to provide a digital experience not just to the end customers but to your partners as well. And it's got to be able to communicate with those partners. It's got to have the support for multiple protocols, data, and different connectivity options. And obviously the recent pandemic has just driven the need for more of that remote mode of operation. So there's a few sort of key approaches. As I've mentioned before, you know, you can just go about improving your organisation's current business model and processes. So you're just sort of digitising what you've already done. You can then expand on that and enhance it, add a little bit of value add. You can also then use it to create entirely new business models and processes or create an innovation ecosystem. So if you know, as a few examples, you know, there's a lot of retail outlets like Target invested a huge amount in a mobile app to be able to give their users a seamless experience, whether they're in-store or online, and be able to pull all of their systems together, and they updated their entire sort of point of sale service to do that as well. You know, Domino's delivered a contactless platform for their customers and integrated ordering into various other platforms like Facebook Messenger, Twitter, Alexa. You know, I quite like the idea of Alexa, deliver me a pepperoni pizza. You know, you think of someone like IKEA. They were, you know, in the pandemic, they were stuck. No one could visit their stores. How do they, you know, sell their products? You know, they implemented artificial reality into their mobile app, so you could see and visualize, you know, items of furniture in your house and then buy them online through the app. And the point of sort of creating new business services, BBVA run, large bank run point of sale services. They've taken their data, anonymized it, and they sell that data to retail outlets, give them insights into where people are buying stuff, when, habits, you know, that sort of customer information. So those sort of things on what can you do with the data and the information you have. You've got to try and think about those aspects. One of the key ones that I think is really important to bear in mind, is building that ecosystem. So one of the things with sort of the digital platforms is enabling you to work better with others. So, for example, you know, Transport for London, you're all probably familiar, shares lots of data on air quality, tube bus times, traffic camera images, walking, cycling. It's all available. Now, in a report by Deloitte, they believe that other third parties utilising that data has generated over £130 million revenue for London in a year. So in healthcare, there was a small company, Macedon C, who projected a plan for up to £200 million savings just because it could access and utilise and analyse the data that was provided from the NHS. So it's not just about your data, it's what you can do with others' data as well. And that sort of availability of data is just getting better and better. Another good example of ecosystem expansion is open banking. Of course, it wasn't a natural organic thing, it was enforced and regulated. But the idea there was to increase and provide a better market for financial services and provide better services to customers. You know, between 2019 and 2020, there was a 450% growth in the number of API calls to the open banking platform. Over 300 third-party providers were registered for new services, providing new services customers insights, wealth management, account aggregation, and that's all still increasing. And I still don't think the sort of key use case has been unlocked yet, but the potential there with the information you've got to be able to utilize that information within your organization or provide new services using that data is quite critical. Obviously, again, I'm not going to go into the deal, but security on this is absolutely key. So meeting the PSD2 secure customer authentication and consent and GDPR rules is absolutely critical with any of these services, and that's got to be absolute number one concern when you're building these platforms. So a lot of innovation needs strong foundations to grow. You've got to have the right tools and capabilities to allow that wonderful team that you've put together that's been empowered and given the freedom to develop their services. So innovation, like anything else, needs strong foundations to grow. So there's a few sort of key elements that you want to sort of consider. Obviously, one is fast, reliable infrastructure. A lot of people are moving to the cloud, leveraging public cloud infrastructure. Fast infrastructure provisioning is excellent. I remember it used to take me months to get a new server into the data center, but now, you can provision it within minutes, if not quicker. Scalability is key. Now, this is one of the things where, again, I've seen a few customers and a few projects that haven't really leveraged the benefits of cloud, because there's a lot of lift and shift to cloud, and that's great. You take it off-prem, off your VMs, and you're running it in the cloud, but you're treating it the same, and it's not. You're not leveraging the core benefits of cloud-native infrastructure. I remember when I first deployed my first development environment into AWS. It was great, and then a few weeks later we realized we really should be turning that off overnight and saving us some money. Those sort of things, you've got to think about how to utilize that environment better and leverage the benefits that those sort of platforms really do give you. So alongside that, obviously, is Devops and Automation, CI/CD. The ability to do fast release cycles, robust testing, reliable service delivery is an absolute must in delivering new innovation on your digital platforms for your business. So having that fast, flexible infrastructure, having the DevOps and automation allows your teams to deliver those services in that way. So as I mentioned before, when I was working with HMRC and they did the last digital transformation, we had over 40 Scrum teams delivering digital services to the customers with the new .gov.uk platform. Now, those 40 Scrum teams are working on over 500 microservices, and they were delivering 50 production changes a week. And that was fantastic. And the only reason they were able to do that is because we had a really good core platform that enabled them to work autonomously. They can deliver their code, they can write it, deliver it, manage it, maintain it, re-release it, all under their own control. True agile. You weren't waiting on a third-party team to do anything for you. So that really shows the sort of power that you've got to have. And if you can get to that sort of level, that iteration that I mentioned earlier around having to be able to react to feedback, react to changes, having a platform that can operate in that way is absolutely critical. On the third-party ecosystem, your platform's got to allow easy partner onboarding, discovery of services, having a marketplace to work with your growing ecosystem. So, self-service access, secure access, being able to control who can see what in your platform really helps to make sure that you can get the services to people that need them. And one of the things to look at as well is allowing the developers to focus on building services, looking at the low code or domain service level languages rather than full code approaches. allows you to some degree, break out of the restriction and difficulty of finding, hardcore developers. And some of those low-code approaches for integrations, APIs, for front-end development can all help your teams to develop those services a lot faster. However, you also still need the platform to be able to cope with those complex cases. Most companies don't just have simple services. They've got something in their closet that's a little bit non-standard and a bit bespoke, where you still need to be able to leverage full code, have those developers work on those more complex cases. So again, you've got to have capability to handle that. However, the key aspect of this is APIs and integration, because all of these services, everything we've been talking about, comes back to data. It's access to data. You've got to be able to expose those data and those services in a secure manner, but you've got to be able to deliver those APIs quickly. You've got to be able to integrate with systems quickly. You've got to be able to integrate with third-party platforms quickly. So that's one of the sort of main reasons WSO2 does what it does, is making sure that you've got that fast access to your APIs and you can integrate in your systems very quickly. Right. So one of the key aspects there, just a slightly different representation, is having your digital core that can work within all of those capabilities, utilize all of those surrounding capabilities, DevOps, cloud native engineering, modern microservice architectures, etc., is what really helps your business be able to give a platform for those teams to utilize and deliver services that you need to stay relevant or compete in your market. And one of the things that I think is key is digital innovation is not just about the next great idea. It's about having a platform to quickly find those ideas that work. That's it. Thank you very much.